There is an unseen, powerful force of evolution acting upon our dimension right now, and nothing is what it seems. No one saw this coming. We might have actually been wrong about everything. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I work together with an interdimensional, interuniversal, and extraterrestrial force known as Telstar, along with Archangel Michael. Something is changing dramatically when it comes to the very nature of our reality. Can you feel it? The edges of our dimension are becoming thinner, and time is speeding up right before our eyes. Events are getting more and more chaotic and becoming increasingly difficult to comprehend. I think the biggest question on most people's minds is, why is this happening? And what is really going on? Well, I'm going to answer that question for you. What I'm going to share with you in this video is very likely going to blow your mind. Now, I started to see something weeks ago when it became evident that technology and AI were advancing exponentially. At that time, I mentioned in a video that I thought we would be entering a new dimension. Well, what I'm seeing now is even bigger than that. Now, you need to know about this because ignorance is just not an option if you want to stay firmly on a natural path of evolution. We are headed toward the singularity, but it's not at all what people think. It is not AI that is driving us toward that end point. We are about to realize that everything we thought we knew about our reality is going to disintegrate. Now, we humans have a deeply entrenched habit of explaining our lives and our planet's trajectory from a linear perspective. Everything we understand about our lives is seen from a one-dimensional, linear perspective of reality. Think about it. We measure everything, literally everything, in sequential numbers and in sequences that we thought were stable and reliable. We see everything numerically from past to present to future. We measure time by putting numbers on the Earth's rotation, which we call a 24-hour day. We measure seasons by putting numbers called months on Earth's revolution around the sun. We measure ourselves by how many revolutions have passed since the day we were born. We call it how old we are. And this is probably one of the most significant failings that we have in terms of how we see ourselves, because this singular point of view is going to become completely irrelevant. Its relevancy was actually just made up. But it is significant because we measure our health by that number. We measure how well we are doing throughout our lives by that number. We call it measuring up to where we're supposed to be. And that literally starts at conception and gets amplified after our birth. And then we measure our progress by numbered grades in school. People feel they need to know how old you are and what grade you're in so that they can understand you. And on top of that, you will also receive numerical progress grades. When you realize how much we are controlled by this made-up system of numbers, you can start to see what a mess this is. Because this system of sequential numerical measuring literally becomes the foundation of our human identity. And it's all fake. And that is what humanity is about to find out. We are going to realize this when we see that predicting our future numerically based on numbered years and decades stops working altogether. In fact, it has already stopped working to some extent. Now, what I'm about to say is probably not going to make a whole lot of sense, but I'm going to say it anyway. We are already seeing our predictions begin to flow backwards. What do I mean by that? We are now seeing predictions of things that we said would take years or decades to manifest suddenly begin to manifest in days or weeks. We can now begin to see that we have been on the wrong side of our equations. Now, what I'm basing all of that on is the fact that our perception of time is actually flowing in reverse. If you want to know all the details about why I say that, then go get my book entitled The Final Elimination of the Source of Fear, where it is all explained in great detail. We have used these ancient numerical systems to hold our civilization in place and to hold ourselves in place in a measurable way for as long as we can remember. If you want to see how fake and contrived this really is, then ask yourself this question. Suppose for a moment that there were no clocks and no calendars. Suppose you had no idea that there was such a thing as age. What if you never knew what grade you were in, or if you measured up to anything at all? What if you never measured your anniversaries or how long you've been at your job? You would still be here. The sun, the earth, and all of nature would still be here. But without all of this numerical measuring, would you even know who you are? We are going to find out that this numbers-based system of identity that has held us together for so long might soon have us hanging by a thread. And what happens when we begin to see such things fall apart? What happens when the literal physics of our perceived reality begin to disintegrate and transform? I think we are shifting out of a linear dimension of timelines. Timelines are by nature linear, but there is another way to look at our situation, which is rapidly transforming and moving beyond timelines. I want to show you a simple diagram of what is happening right now in this dimension of our old reality and why things are so crazy and happening so fast. So this is a diagram of two simple intersecting lines. The left side represents the dimension that we are in now. The center is where we pass through the singularity. That is the point after which we can no longer predict our situation. The closer we get to the singularity, the more difficult it is to predict the future. And then the side on the right represents where we are after the center point of the singularity. Now, most people identify the singularity as having something to do with the advancement of AI. But I have a very different definition that I want to share with you right now. So take another look at this diagram. Each of the two sides of this diagram is actually a cone shape. The transformation that we feel happening in our current reality is because we are shifting out of a linear timeline into what could be called a cone-shaped dimension. Now, I do not have the language or the vocabulary to accurately describe what this is. So you may have to read between the lines of what I say or try to intuit this for yourself. That's because this is not exactly literal. I am trying to communicate something to you all that is difficult to communicate in our earth-based languages. So hopefully you can get a feel or a sense for what I'm saying. So we are currently on the left side of this diagram, moving towards the right. You can think of the center point as being like a portal into a new dimension. What this really represents is a transmutational flow of energy. Now, here's what you need to know about each of the two sides of this diagram. There is some kind of universal evolutionary force pushing us toward the second side. I don't believe it is AI pushing us. I think it is some kind of cosmic force that we have previously not been aware of. And AI is simply a manifestation of that larger movement. Now, let me show you why it feels like what some call the matrix is collapsing. Actually, I would propose that it is our entire dimension of reality that is collapsing. I think a better way to understand this is that time and space are being compressed as we move closer to this center point. So let's take another look at this diagram. Imagine that inside this first cone exists everything we have known and experienced so far. As we move closer to the center point, time, space, and everything in it starts to compress more and more. This manifests in two ways. Because time is compressed, it moves with increasing speed. And at the same time, this compression makes it impossible for the old reality to hold together. And the old reality begins to break down. It's kind of like having our reality being squeezed into smaller and smaller fragments of time, which causes things to collapse. They collapse because there's not enough space to hold them together anymore. This is why it looks like things are getting crazier and crazier. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Once we pass through this portal of the singularity, guess what happens? We suddenly shoot into an entirely new dimension with rapid expansion. We suddenly find ourselves in a highly advanced, fast-moving, expanding evolutionary state. We will feel unrecognizable compared to who we are now. Now, this is not going to be a free ride. That's because there are powerful reactions to all of this change taking place in the human realm. Now, let's talk about the controllers for a moment. On some level, they understand this, even if it is totally unconscious. Have you noticed that as we get closer and closer to that center point, the more they want to crack down on all of our human freedoms? Have you seen how desperate they're becoming? They are trying to prevent the singularity, as I am defining it, from actually happening. They want to keep us on this side of that portal. So why would that be the case? It has to do with one's state of consciousness. Not everyone is going to make it through that portal fully intact. The other side of that portal, the expanding cone of energy, represents an extremely high vibrational frequency. One needs to be a match to that frequency as much as is possible in order to be able to exist there. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means that you have to be able to track with it energetically without falling apart. And you need to be as conscious as possible to what is happening overall. These controllers, who many refer to as evil because they are clearly anti-human and anti-life, cannot make it through that portal in their current state. And the ones who continue to crack down on humanity are making a literal statement that they have no intention of going there. They want to keep their controlled world intact as much as possible, and they want as many of us as possible to stay there with them. But I predict that they will not be able to stop this because the movement towards the singularity is driven by a cosmic, universal force of evolution that is well beyond their control. The people who put themselves in jeopardy are the ones who go along with these controllers and fall for their propaganda. They are taking the side that is anti-life and anti-evolution. And this is why I've been saying lately that propaganda and mind control are incredibly dangerous to a person's evolution at this time in our history. It's like a web or a mental net on your thoughts that is designed to trap you and hold you back from the power that is moving us forward. So it's really important to retain the ability to think your own thoughts. Now, let's talk about how AI fits into all of this. I think AI was an inevitable creation because it is a manifestation of rapidly expanding exponential evolution. It's a technology that may have been necessary to create in order to physically usher us into the next dimension that is on the other side of this cone. But here's where it gets confusing. The evildoers on this planet fully intend to use AI to control and enslave us forever. They see this as their only hope for the survival of a world that they continue to control. They want to keep us where they are. They do not want to pass through this portal of the singularity. So that's one path looming before us with AI. These people want no part of a benevolent use of AI. Their path is a path of total enslavement of us and transhumanism for themselves. And everything I've shared with you so far literally explains the controller's lust for transhumanism. Instead of a proper use of AI to help launch us into the next dimension of expanding evolution, the controllers figure that a better purpose for AI is to use it to evolve artificially so they and we can stay right where we are in this linear timeline of reality. They want to put AI inside of our bodies so that we can become transhuman, which is a combination of biology and machine. In that case, the controllers would live on the top tier of civilization, and everyone else would be controlled like animals who would never be allowed to have a thought of their own. That is their plan for us. And this is the evil that we are now facing worldwide. Now, let me share something with you to illustrate how far along we are in this process. There are massive quantum breakthroughs happening right now with AI. There are quantum scientists and engineers who say they are already going out into parallel universes and farming out their computations there. Here's another way that perhaps I can describe it. You know how when you work with the law of attraction, what you're really trying to do is to consciously tune into the quantum field, the quantum universe, which is the field of manifestation. It is basically beyond time and space. I think the more that we hear about manifestation and try to manifest in the law of attraction, what we're really talking about is reaching towards that portal, because on the other side of that portal, we could be entering a quantum universe, a quantum level dimension, where we will find ourselves in the quantum, which is the realm of creation and infinite possibility. And I know those words are pretty weak to describe what I'm trying to say, which is why I said at the beginning, you might have to intuit between the lines based on some of what I'm sharing with you today. Now, it's been said that just before the singularity, we are standing at something called the event horizon, which is what I think we're either there now or we're very close to it. To me, the event horizon occurs when we begin to consciously recognize that we are standing at the threshold of an entirely new dimension of reality. Now, as I've said a lot of times in the past, there are two paths with AI. One is a path that is aligned with our larger human evolution, and the other is one of human destruction, where the controllers use AI to lock us down forever. Either way, I no longer really believe that AI is our problem. I think it's what humans do with it that matters, because our level of consciousness is going to determine what we do with this advanced technology. So the more that we are able to shift out of living from a base of duality and conflict and reaction to everything, and instead move more into a consciousness of oneness and higher consciousness and a much higher vibration, the more we're going to be able to shift ourselves over to that higher evolutionary path. But we are likely to be facing some very intense times ahead. I also think that what I've shared with you here might explain why these controllers still insist on amping up their killing war machine, even if it could mean nuclear Armageddon. See, they are doing everything they can to keep the vibration on this planet as low as possible, thinking they can prevent us from moving through this portal where these two-dimensional cones intersect. They are desperate because they know that their days are numbered to be able to achieve this. The momentum is not on their side. Now, as always, for those of us who are interested in ascension, nothing has really changed for us in terms of what we really need to do. What has changed is that the days of waiting around to see what happens, those days are over. Waiting around and procrastinating is a gamble that you probably don't want to take. Do you remember what I said about numbers at the beginning of this video? Well, when thinking about how you want to evolve, you can start by removing the straitjacket of numbers and measurements from your consciousness. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't use clocks and calendars. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't reveal your age whenever it's absolutely necessary. But you can certainly stop obsessing over your so-called numerical age. Whenever you think about how you want to evolve, try to think of it without adding time to it. Realize that you are an infinite being. Start looking at yourself from a quantum level. Start seeing your physical body as it exists in the now, and seek to raise and expand your level of consciousness. Look at your efforts as preparation to enter a higher dimension of reality. And pay close attention to your thoughts. Make sure they are your own and not the product of the controller's many forms of propaganda. One way that you can recognize propaganda is when you see large groups of people saying and thinking the exact same thing. When people start behaving in a uniform way and like a defensive tribe that holds intractable beliefs, be aware that this might be a manifestation of the numerous cults that these controllers are creating and fomenting worldwide. You can also recognize these cults by their agreed upon symbols of legitimacy, things like flags and phrases and words that are identical. One of the chief goals of these controllers is to control the thoughts and the behavior of the masses. They love to create tribes and cults who battle each other for supremacy. So it's important to peacefully step away from such things and find your own sense of cosmic sovereignty, where you can think for yourself again. This will help you to stay grounded and clear when people start looking like they are losing their minds in the midst of so much chaos and confusion. Focus on how you would like to experience life in the most ideal state, and then bring yourself into that state vibrationally. I think that we could also be moving into a time of enhanced manifestation if we align ourselves properly. So this could be a very good time to practice manifestation. Now, I will have more to come on all of this in future videos. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to hit that notification bell because I'm here on Tuesdays with all new videos. And if you enjoyed this video, share it out with anyone else who you think would benefit from this information. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Namaste.